Welcome to the Art of War in the Wild mini conference. I'm your host, Sayal Hur. This mini conference is composed of a few panel conversations focused on the real world application of timeless wisdom. The backdrop is that we are in a world experiencing a leadership crisis on a global scale across various dimensions, both personal and professional, private and public, among many other dimensions, resulting in widespread struggle and suffering. Much of what we're experiencing stems from embracing an almost Pollyannish perspective that romanticizes leadership, human nature, and reality, sterilizes our organizations and enterprises, and infantilizes people in leadership roles, among others. When in reality, we should be embracing a more realistic perspective that integrates every aspect of human nature and reality, including the good, the bad, and the ugly. The Art of War, or the Sun Tzu, provides profound timeless insights into leadership, strategy, culture, conflict, execution, and much more, offering approaches for surviving and thriving in today's reality. The objective of these conversations is to engage a few forward thinkers and forward doers who are reshaping the modern world through the wisdom of the art of war, to explore the gap between principles and practice where reality and theory converge, to explore applying ancient wisdom to modern-day scenarios, highlighting the dynamics between intentions and outcomes, and to illuminate insights for engaging in challenging environments. Welcome to the Art of War in the Wild mini-conference.
Welcome, Christoph and company.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
All yours, Christoph.
Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Krzysztof Daniel. Friends call me Chris. I'm from Poland. I work as a strategy consultant. Some people call me management consultant. I had their name. And I have the honor of being moderator here. My natural moderation style is to be as quiet as possible. So with that, I would like to ask you, dear participants, to introduce yourself, perhaps describe your background. Cynthia, can we start with you?
Of course. Hi, everyone. I am Cynthia Chambers, and I'm thrilled to be here today. I am a business and technology professional with over 3 decades of experience across telecommunications, pharmaceutical, and retail industries. I have the ability to work across multiple disciplines and manage across functional lines. My passion is to mentor leaders, teams, fostering an environment where everyone's inspired to contribute. My secret sauce is my ability to ask penetrating questions, uncover unstated assumptions, and manage conflict among diverse personalities. So I'm happy to be here and engage in this discussion today.
Fantastic. Thank you. Liam?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I appreciate it. My name's Liam Shannon, and my background is as a teacher and a soccer coach. I was a high school civics teacher for 3 years, and then I moved into soccer coaching full-time. And those two areas meshed when I took the art of war, which I had studied in college, and attempted to translate it word for word, as close to word for word as possible, into a book on soccer. So it reads, my work reads exactly as the art of war should read if it were written for soccer. That's my background. I released the book in April 2020, an interesting time in the world, and strange for me that it has positive memories. It reached #1 in Amazon in its category for new releases, so that was really good. I made sure I grabbed a screenshot. You can't see it, but I got it pinned up in the back there. Really what I've been doing ever since is trying to convince anybody and everybody that this book is timeless, as Sai said, and as I think we all know, and that it can be applied to so many different genres. We all know, it's been used in business, but I think it's been underused in sport. It has a few very big admirers in sports, but it hasn't nearly been utilized as much as I think it should have. So anyhow, thanks for having me on here. I appreciate it, and I hope to contribute.
Thank you so much. Ben.
Hey everyone. So I'm Ben. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Mission Control. We build automations. We try and make businesses run more efficiently, more effectively. Before I was doing the technology stuff, I spent a little bit of time in the military, and I've got a huge, anyone who's watching this on LinkedIn will probably know this, a huge interest in the work of John Boyd. But I do have a bit of a confession to make, which is that I've never actually read fully The Art of War. I've picked up pieces of it. But I think I'm probably going to recognize a lot of the concepts that we're going to discuss here, probably through other lenses. So through the technology lens, through the kind of technology landscape lens, and some of the other stuff that I've spent a bit of time with. So I'm really interested in exploring that angle of, much as Liam's done for soccer, kind of trying to extract the underlying principles and see how we can apply them as generally as possible.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with everyone. It's great to have folks join us. Likewise, I'm a coach and consultant, practitioner, if you will, and likewise author. I've been doing transformation work for over 4 decades, as I like to say, far too long, and probably need to get out of this business sooner or later. I've worked with hundreds of organizations, thousands of teams and individuals to really help them focus on calibrating their business models and operating models to have an impact in the world. At the end of the day, I really look at myself as a student of life, a pracademic in praxis, as I like to say, combining practice and theory. Overall, a student of human nature and human dynamics in the context of the human condition. And as we, I think, have all experienced at one time or another, the human animal it's quite magnificent in its natural habitat and likewise dangerous at times. So definitely an interesting dynamic to play with. So thank you for the opportunity all around to join you folks.
Thank you. So the theme of this event is the real world application of timeless wisdom. And Cynthia, I would like you to open, perhaps, if you want, to share your experience with the Art of War, perhaps the most relevant one, or the experience that made you disappointed with the book, if that was ever the case.
First, it was never the case. I have no disappointments in the book or the application of it. My background with the Art of War comes first on the receiving end, having been coached by Sai, where he wrecked my normal for 18 months, just pulling me out of the comfort zone that I was in and identifying just my issues with conflict. I saw conflict as all conflict was bad conflict. So it was transformative for me to get out of my own way and to be okay with conflict, chaos, the unknown. And I then later became a practitioner of it by being trained. The Art of War was our coach's manual. And so taking hold in the Sage Commander, I read a number of times. And so this book, this concept has taken root in me and has naturally rose to be in everything I do. It's become a way of how I show up. And I'm excited because I get to help others get the breakthrough that I had through the book on an individual level, team level, and even at a leadership level.
Fantastic. Thank you. Liam, same question.
Same question. My only disappointment is that my work hasn't made me a millionaire yet. I'm very upset about that because I'm convinced that it's absolute genius. And I can say that with humility because, you know, it's not my work. I told Sai this when we spoke the other week. You know, this is Sun Tzu's work. You know, I'm just standing on the shoulder of a giant. Really, I'm the guy who just had the light bulb moment go off over my head and just thought, how has this never been done before for soccer when it's so very, very clear it can be adapted. But the work of genius isn't mine; it's Sun Tzu's genius, you know. So yeah, that's my only disappointment. I, for the life of me, can't figure out how I haven't been able to sell it, other than the fact I'm a terrible salesman. You know, sell the idea. That is the book sells okay, but I would like, I suppose, being serious, my only disappointment so far is that I created a curriculum syllabus, if you will, to teach, and that has not been utilized yet. So I don't know if you can call that a disappointment. It's just something that I'm aiming for in the future. So that's the first part. I wanted to tag on to something that Cynthia said, and that was about all conflict being bad conflict, you know, and that was the view that you had. And I thought that was really interesting because, you know, almost every passage in The Art of War, it's so simple, but it can go so in depth in so many different ways. Like, you know, we say conflict is a bad thing. Well, of course, you know, on the surface, it sounds like a terrible thing. Two people fighting, you know, two armies going at it. But I mean, what if conflict is an open conversation about people, you know, between people with different opinions? You know, could you describe that as a conflict? Well, in a way, but that's really positive, isn't it? You know, two people talking with different perspectives. That's what I love about The Art of War, probably most of all, is that you can take the simplest ideas and go in so in depth in so many different directions with them. So did I answer the second part of that question?
Yes, you did. Thank you,
Sorry.
Liam. Ben, same question for you. Even if you want, you can expand on the conflict part, because that looks like an interesting thing.
Yeah, sure. I guess so. I guess I've got a suggestion for Liam for title of the second book. I guess is The Art of More. Perhaps if you're disappointed with
Nice.
the outcome so far.
Very clever. Very clever. Yeah, I like that.
So yeah, I'm not disappointed with The Art of War because I've never properly read it. So my contact with Sun Tzu's ideas really come from kind of, well, two areas really, but really one area. So Wardley mapping, which is where Chris and I first came into contact as a very useful tool for talking about kind of business and ecological landscapes and how you think about how things evolve technologically, societally, all that kind of thing. But as I understand it, Simon's inspiration for that was a combination of both Boyd's work in the OODA loop and The Art of War. And Boyd in turn was heavily influenced by Sun Tzu's ideas and other kind of Eastern philosophies. And I guess like the main point I would sort of make about conflict is a quote from Boyd, which is, you know, that everything that is an entity operating in an environment has a biological imperative to improve its capacity for independent action. So it's not necessarily conflict between two things. It's just conflict where you rub up against an environment, right? It's wanting to be able to have some kind of outcome and make things happen inevitably means that you're in conflict with the status quo because you're trying to make a change. So yeah, it's change more conflict. And as we all know at the moment, change is a accelerating phenomena at the moment, driven by all sorts of different things. So yeah, I mean, there's no point trying to pretend that it's not happening. So you might as well make yourself familiar with the tools that enable you to surf the waves, I suppose.
Thank you, Ben. I mean, for me, this is really striking when you are saying that if you want to change the status quo, you are already in conflict. That's a very nice perspective. Sai, over to you. Same question about the experience with the book and perhaps opinion on the conflict.
Definitely, thank you, and I definitely appreciate the perspectives that are being put on the table. When I was introduced to the book itself at an extremely young age, I was almost really conditioned, in a sense, to really deal with reality as a collection of tensions, and where those tensions intersect, that's what we would commonly call as conflict or friction or rub or numerous other words. So really, that's where the energy is. Quite honestly, if you don't have conflict, as we term it, conflict. Tension, then you have no energy for creativity and curiosity and magic. That's the word that I like. What is most interesting through the journey, that one of the most interesting things is we resist the naturalness of this wisdom. And a lot of it is due to the conditioning socially that we go through in one form or another. But that, and helping people return to their childlike nature is incredible. I mean, that's why I love some of the work that folks do with the youth, quite honestly. So
okay, so following on that line, if you think about the conflict, about the intersection of different tensions, and if you think about the conflict as something that motivates us to act, to be curious and stuff like that, how do you actually figure out where is the biggest source of conflict in your environment, where you should look at, and where should you channel your curiosity? Liar.
Well, where you should channel your curiosity, I think, is wherever you're most curious. At least in my realm, for the soccer realm. I was making notes before this on a short study I had done with the former Barcelona coach, Xavi Hernandez. One of the greatest midfielders of his one of the greatest midfielders of all time, never mind his generation. And talking about his passion, his philosophy, his style of play, and how everything stems from that. And from my perspective, soccer is an art form, although it's been very, very much turned into a science. There's a real pushback between more seasoned and elder proponents like myself that, it's a little bit too sciencey now and not enough art. And when you look at soccer or any sport as a type of art form, you have to look at how you want to express yourself, and you have to be true to your nature. So going back to your statement there about where you should direct your curiosity, I think it should be a natural thing, and where you are most curious, and really delve into that to decide who you want to be and how you want to express yourself. And then if you're talking in a practical manner about facing an opponent, I don't want to say conflict, because we know that word can go so many different areas, but when you're facing an opponent, obviously studying their habits is such a massive part of it. As Sun Tzu said, you know your opponent and know yourself, and then you don't have to fear anything.
Fantastic, thank you. Ben?
Yeah, so curiosity, I guess, is I guess I've followed my own curiosity throughout my career, really, and I think that can take you in some interesting places, in interesting directions. With regards to where you apply your energy, though, it's probably not where there's the greatest conflict, right? You want to find, if you're going to take a leaf out of Boyd's book or Musashi's book or Sun Tzu's book, where you want to apply your energy is where it can have the greatest effect, right? You put strength on weakness, or you find the area that you can have the greatest impact. So in my work, where I do kind of technology consulting and business process improvement, the thing that would be the highest conflict thing to do would be to take the process as you find it and just try and optimize the hell out of it as it is. The highest impact, least energy approach would be to see if you can change the process at all and make it more amenable to optimization. So, it's quite an interesting, and again, I think what Liam said about the art of this, right? Technology is the most kind of least artful thing in the world. But where the really interesting thing is finding that interface between the technology and the people in an organization. And especially now with the rise of vari different types of AI tools, the thing that used to be even 5-10 years ago a very hard, I mean when I say hard, I mean like sharply defined, hard edged. You go and write some code, that code works or it doesn't. Well, now with AI and LLMs particularly, you've got a much fuzzier edge around technology and processes with businesses, which I find really fascinating to be around. Like the surface area for where you can have an impact as a technology person now with these new tools is really, really opening up. So that's where my curiosity is right now.
I think I would agree with you, Ben, with regards to and Liam, self, because my curiosity is always going to point to me as to, and when I look back at my career, there was a conflict that I had because I started out as a developer and then to quality assurance. Figured if I could break it, knowing the code from the inside out, that would be more use of my energy. And so I was getting a little uneasy, if you will, just because by the time it gets to QA, the budget is blown and so forth, and you find in huge bugs or whatever at the end doesn't do the project any good. I mean, it extends the date, the whole nine. And so that curiosity that I had for myself was, how could I be more effective as a technology professional? And so it wasn't my time being used as a quality assurance. I then moved to a business analyst to see whether or not I could impact from a requirements perspective. And so it was there that I found out that the same kind of test cases that you have during QA, you have use cases during the requirement phase. And instead of breaking code, you're now breaking theory. And so being able to use cases to start breaking theories early on in the process, the software development lifecycle, I found myself more useful there, of value, if you will. But then my curiosity didn't stop there, because I'm like saying there's more where my energy could be used. And so that put me in a direction where, what's the one neck or one throat to choke, the project manager, going there. And so my career went through all the different phases out of curiosity as to how I could be better served in the software development lifecycle. So that curiosity, I think, is always going to be within yourself, and then it affects your environments around you.
Okay, thank you. Sai.
Yeah, I really appreciate how everyone is describing their experience as such. I think there's different contexts, right? The wisdom is very widely applicative in any context, right? You have different stakeholders, different people, different factors involved. And there's a naturalness that all those factors and people have their own intentions. So really, the curiosity first before creativity. And the big mistake that a lot of people make is they try to be creative first before they're curious, which is out of context. but really being curious on how one help integrate all those intentions in that context to take as whole as possible. So when really applying the energy and kind of integrating a lot of the stuff that folks have already mentioned is, I like to look at it as return on energy. If we're looking at taking whole, then where do I apply my energy, as limited as it is, right? Where I'm going to get the maximum return on that energy in order to take whole. And that's a constructive way to look at the application of energy. In a destructive way, if I don't want to take whole, then I can be very dangerous with wisdom like this and apply energy in very devious and unhealthy ways. So definitively, it's a lot of exploration, discovery within any given context. That's the beautiful thing about it. I'm still a child at heart, and that the art of war gives me the ability to be that child respectfully.
Fantastic, thank you. So I would like to probe that direction a little bit further, right? Because if we are naturally curious, if we know what attracts our attention and we have some energy to spend, Sun Tzu wrote that actually prolonged warfare, which I read as a prolonged effort in a particular direction, isn't actually welcome because it's expensive and it depletes your resources relatively fast. So how do you know whether this particular direction is right or wrong, and when you should give up or perhaps look at something else? Ben.
Oh, that is a brilliant question. And the answer is all the time. Always be orienting, as Boyd said. I think I wanted to pick up something that Cynthia said about energy. One of the kind of failure, but maybe pessimizing paths that I see in many organizations is that they spend all of the energy that they have at their disposal, all of their units of doing stuff, and not enough units that they have spent doing stuff, learning about how stuff went. Because the thing that Boyd talks about in OODA is that you've got these observe, orient, decide, and act, which I think he synthesized from a lifetime of study, and I believe probably Sun Tzu was the thing that he studied towards the end of his life when he came up with OODA as a concept. And really, the only time that you're exchanging energy with your environment is either when you're observing, taking new information or energy in, and acting. So when you're spending a huge amount of time just deciding or rethinking stuff, not actually doing it, and then not taking that information back in the feedback loop, I think that's when organizations get into this kind of very linear kind of, we even call it a death march in software engineering, right? It's a project that's just trudging on. Nobody can challenge the stakeholders. Nobody probably at this point even knows why it's being done. Colossal waste of time and effort. And that's why I think these ideas are so incredibly important, because, to Sai's point, we have lots of examples of where this has been used destructively, like Blitzkrieg and other kind of warfare contexts. But there's absolutely no reason why these ideas can't be used in an additive, beneficial sense, right? It's just learning about how you operate in an environment and wanting to move that environment in a certain direction that can be good or evil. These tools are agnostic as to who's using them.
Fantastic, thank you. Liam?
So the translation that I worked on for that exact passage in The Art of War, and obviously there are different versions of The Art of War. I had, if laying siege to an opponent that is only shooting from long range or overall domination without any tactical plans capable of measurable success, the team will grow tired and bored, dampening their spirits and exhausting their strength. I don't know if Ben likes football. Do you, Ben?
I like the idea of football. I don't like watching footballers play football most often.
I gotcha. So that was an assumption based on you being English, of course.
Of course, yep.
So anyhow, much like anything, if you're just banging your head against a brick wall, then you're going to get pretty bored and frustrated. And, as Sun Tzu wrote, dampen your spirits. Nothing's going to dampen your spirits like banging your head against a brick wall. I've seen it multiple times and played multiple times in soccer games where a team is dominant, but it's unsophisticated. It's not thought out. It's a barrage of strength and speed, and there's no real strategy or no dynamic tactics behind the attack. And if you're only bombarding long shots, let's say for soccer, literal shots outside of the penalty area, these are unlikely to result in much success. It needs a lot more thought, a lot more sophistication. So a well thought out plan, based on the opponent is critical. But when is too much? Well, the big difference between soccer and war is there's a finite period for a soccer game, and the goals never move. So with that in mind, you're always trying to get to the same destination, and it can take it can take a huge chunk of that finite period to finally get to where you want to go. Doesn't mean necessarily you're on the wrong track because you don't get there in the first 5 minutes. But I guess it's all relative when too much time and effort is being spent in one place. You need to prod, and you need to probe, and you need to explore, and you need to go with your instincts, and you need to go with your research, and you need to really give it your best effort based on your expertise. But you have to have something in reserve, something different to go on. Teachers will tell you don't just have a lesson plan. You have a backup lesson plan, because it's always, you never know when things are going to go to crap, you don't want to be left there, with your pants down, so to speak. So when is too much? I really think that's a, hate to take it, maybe it's the easy way out, but that's a judgment call based on circumstance.
Okay, thank you. Cynthia?
Listening to Ben and both Liam, from every day to having the backup plan, if we talk in military terms, with the commander knowing his troops and being able to have a pulse on what's too much for them, because a lot of times what might think to be too much might be pushing them so that you get more out of them, like their potential out of them, where too much could be you're overworking them and there's unrealistic expectations. And so I like how going from a waterfall to an agile environment where you're using up resources for a long length of time, all to come to the end and find out that that's not what we asked for from the customer, opposed to agile where you're lockstep in tune with the customer, whoever that might be, internal or external, but the retrospective that's happening at every sprint to be able to see what worked, what didn't work, and where's the areas for improvement. So if you keep a pulse on the project from that perspective, and then equally a pulse on your people to see whether or not you're stressing them to the level where it's unhealthy, then I think you would be able to gauge what's enough and what's not enough, whether you're putting too much on the troops than you need to be. So
Fantastic.
I agree with Ben every day to constantly just be watching and observing so that you can reorient, make new decisions, and then start acting, and then repeat and rinse and repeat, basically.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to emphasize a detail in what you said, Cynthia, and I like it very much. It's like you have to watch both ends. It's the project and the people, and make sure that they are kind of aligned, right? Because earlier, my approach to this end, it would be like you are just watching the project and trying to gauge whether it's okay. It wouldn't be enough. It wasn't enough in my case. So over to you.
Appreciate it. I love all the concepts that are being shared, if you will, and I love as you described Chris, the sort of laying the question out. If we think about really, energy is time, can be translated to time, and time is the most common currency, and we all, we don't know how much time we have. Coming from someone who's flatlined 3 times and come back. And my daughter says, I'm not done yet, if you will. So when we think about, the finiteness of time, exactly as Liam, you mentioned, right? The goal is victory, how it morphs. In a game, it doesn't change, but in life, it might change. I think a lot of it, as we're emphasizing, is relative to context. And I would say, when it's too much or not too much, or when the right time is, really back to awareness. So if you have awareness of the context, the ground, if you will, or the earth, as we go back to the manuscript, within the dynamics, so blending both, now the sage commander can attain victory and advance victory. Very, very, really quoting the reference there. And I love the way that Boyd describes it in terms of energy maneuverability. And that is, fundamentally about the translation of energy within the context of time in any given context to achieve the impact that you want to have. So really, awareness within context to leverage that energy relative to your intentions to achieve what you would like to achieve.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm thinking, right, because you've used the phrase which triggered me, which is like building. Triggered in a positive sense, which is like building situational awareness, and it depends on situational awareness. I would like to ask a question, perhaps Liam, while we start with you. How do you actually build situational awareness, and how do you know that it is exactly what you need?
How do you build situational awareness? Training. The art of war doesn't mention too much about direct training, other than to say that the side with the most disciplined strategy and training usually wins. Soccer is such a fluid game. There's nothing really like it in terms of the traditional American sports. Football is it is very strategic, and American football, that is, is very strategic, and probably the most likely sport to be translated into like a military context. Baseball, obviously, very, very different than soccer, not fluid, and basketball probably the most similar. But still, with all of the timeouts that you have, it's not the same as playing for 45 minutes. So in those 45 minutes, you're going to get 1,000 different situations that you can only prepare for the broad strokes on. So situational awareness. Well, first of all, you got to have your philosophy. You got to have your style of play. Like, what is your purpose? What do you want? I think that's a question, like the most basic question, but one that's neglected often. What do you want? Not just victory. Everybody knows that they want victory, but in what context do you want the victory? And then, at least in terms of soccer, you have your tactics, which are micro. You have your strategy, which is macro. You have your system, which is the two together. So what you really need to build in training is your formation as well as the fifth element, and that your formation, just like in war, is an expression of your philosophy. So what you want to achieve can be viewed visually through your formation. And as you communicate to your team, what it is that you stand for and how it is in general terms that you want to achieve it, you train on those very specific circumstances, like how do we want to switch the point of attack? How do we want to do 2v2 defending in the middle third? Areas like this, and then you leave it up to the players and hope that you've trained them well enough to be successful.
Fantastic, thank you.
And
Cynthia.
would you? Yeah, I was gonna maybe just ask Liam. Would you say that once you do the training with your players, all the different options, all the different tactics that's in their toolbox, that it's during game time that they actually take hold, and then based on them taking hold is when they actually fit the tactic to the situation, making it situational awareness?
Yeah, I would say that's exactly how it is. And soccer is often described as a player's game. It's not a coach's game. All the coaching is done beforehand, and then half time. It's often said that the coaches earn their salaries during that 15 minutes of halftime, because that's when the real work has to be done. The 45 minutes either side of that, that's when the players have to take control, and when your systems and your tactics have to come into place, and what you've, to use a military term, what you've drilled into them. But you can't drill, you can't drill art. You can't drill improvisation. You have to create situations in training where players are able to express themselves and able to improvise. And then sure, when it comes game time, you have to be able to step back and hope that you've done a good enough job that they can deploy your strategies.
So if we take it from the sport world into the technology world, I would say your leaders. Leadership is, their role is to empower their employees to know what's in play, all the different strategies of that particular organization, so that they could actually step up and do their job during the projects, being able to be reactive, not so much running back to the leader to find out what's our next move and this, that, and the other, but take some ownership. But situational awareness is pretty much from the book. I would say understanding the environment that you're in, all the things that make up that environment, so that you have a clear understanding of everything that's at risk, everything that, what's the cost, any liabilities, that could be observed, that just taking hold of everything around you before you make a decision. And I believe the more self-aware you are, the more you can be aware of your surroundings, the environment, and a particular situation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ben.
So I think there's a sort of the textbook answer to how you can measure your situational awareness is how often you're surprised, right? And this would go into kind of Carl Friston's free energy principle, but Boyd would term this as how good is your orientation, right? How close does your orientation match unfolding circumstances? The most important part of Boyd's OODA loop is this idea of implicit guidance and control, which comes from the German kind of Blitzkrieg before concept of Fingerspitzengefühl. And Chris, I hope I've pronounced it this time correctly. But yeah, translated fingertip feel, right? How much fidelity do you have with understanding the information that's coming in the environment, helping you make the right decisions? And just to pick up on an earlier point, I can't remember who was saying it, but I did a course a while back with a chap called Johnny Miller called Nervous System Mastery. And in that course, we talked about exteroception and interoception. So exteroception is that fingertip feel, like with your environment, how well do you understand the ground? And interoception is how well do you understand yourself? To what degree can you feel and feel as an individual, but in a team, like the sense of how's everyone doing today? How's morale? In the case of football, not that I play football, but there is a feeling of a team that's gelling well and working well together. In a military context, there's a feeling that you have when you've drilled a situation enough, and you drill situations, right? You practice scenarios that you already know, and the measure of how well you've done that is how quickly you can turn that into intuition in the world, right? So you can teach drills, but you can't teach battle, right? You can teach elements of fighting, but you can't teach fighting, right? You can teach somebody how to throw a punch, you can't teach them to fight. They have to just learn that through osmosis. And I can give you an exact example of what this feels like from a martial arts point of view. Years ago, I used to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu before I ruined my knee, and as a white or blue belt rolling with somebody of a higher belt, what that feels like is it feels like drowning, because you just do not have the sensory apparatus or the exteroception or the interoception to be able to deal with the bandwidth of information and energy that's coming at you. So from the we're both two entities in the same context, right? In a role in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm completely overwhelmed and not able to keep up, and I'm down this kind of what Boyd calls this conceptual spiral where my map of reality is moving further and further away from what actual reality is. And the person that I'm rolling with is completely calm, completely in control, understands what I'm going to do before I do it, understands what they're going to do. Well, in fact, probably doesn't even need to think about what they're going to do, because it's all just flowing naturally through this process of intuition. And I think that's the real art of, when you feel like that's happening, that's when you have good situational awareness, I think.
Fantastic, Ben. Thank you so much. Sorry.
Thank you. First off, Chris, thank you for a brilliant question all around. All the questions are good, but man, this one is really, really powerful. How do you build situational awareness? The general thought that I answer with is experiences. And experiences, and when folks have emphasized them, training is as I like to say, training or drilling is a controlled experience, if you will, more than anything else. And it can get out of control. So please, no disrespect to training or drilling or what have you. But it's conditioning in such a way that you're toning your muscles. And if you look at, I look at agility, resilience, and anti-fragility as really muscle fibers that make up a complexity muscle for how we deal in the world. So through experiences, we are toning those muscles. In particular, what the factor is that's at play is stress. Not too much stress that you don't survive. You have to have enough stress that you thrive, but not too much stress that'll kill you, if you will. But once you begin to tone those muscles through experience, it gives us the ability, and I'll say this is what I leverage the art of war, and I leverage Boyd, our ability to intuit, our ability to improvise, our ability to work with our intent based on orientation and truly achieve that impact in the world. So what I always encourage folks to do is seek out experiences where you can grow these muscles and grow your situational awareness through those experiences. But again, don't compromise yourself to a degree that you would, respectfully die.
Yeah, if I could
or work with someone who will do the same to you. I guess I'll put it that way. Sorry, Ben.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I was just going to add one more thing to that, which I think is quite an important point, is that the difference between training and reality is that in training you are trying to surprise yourself, right? You are trying to find the edges of what you know. You're trying to find the areas where you're growing, and that feels quite uncomfortable. Learning a new technology or doing an experiment where you don't know what the outcome is. But very often that's not appropriate or acceptable in competition or the real world. And the big difference in kind of technology is that, and business versus kind of sport and the military, is that the time we spend in training is actually really minimal and everything is real, right? So that means that people are quite reluctant to spare the energy budget that is required for improvement. And I think that's the big difference, is that companies and organizations and teams and structures that allow and encourage that, like for example open source versus enterprise software development, the structures that allow and encourage that jumping between kind of the learning unstructured kind of outcomes and then the driving hard for a goal, and I think that's probably something that businesses don't really do very well. We're always driving for a goal. We don't have quite enough time for kind of free play and improvement. And it's the anti-fragility kind of curve, isn't it? The more time you spend, it's like writing a financial option, right? The more time you spend, you spend that time on learning, or 20% time, as Google used to call it. That's a cost that that you're never going to get back. But sometimes you get the exponential return, and that's what makes it worth it.
Completely with you, Ben. Completely with you. And definitively, this is why coaches have a role, if you will, outside of training. So definitively, the parallels are definitely there. And especially if you have the wrong coach, you're putting yourself in some significant danger at that juncture. So definitively with you.
Yeah.
Thank you, folks. I can't believe it. It feels like we have barely started, but we are 3 minutes in the session. So I would like to ask you for closing comments. Cynthia.
Well, I think this conversation has brought out the different aspects that you can see the art of war operating in. I love the sports side that we talked about. It gave me a new perspective with regards to the whole teaming concept. I would say back to self-awareness, not so much situation awareness, but self-awareness is going to be key in starting the process so that you can affect your external surroundings. Once an individual is grounded with self, know your enemy and know thyself, I think would be beneficial. And for me, I know that it has transformed my life, just being able to go inward and seek that awareness with myself. I know with regards to everything I do now, I'm challenging all resistance. With regards to somebody asked me to do something or there's some resistance there, I'm challenging it to find out why it is that there's that resistance and so forth. So just being self-aware to that extent and taking ownership is going to be key. So that's what I would like to leave.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Ben.
Yeah, I mean, you literally could talk about this stuff all day, couldn't you? Yeah, I don't think we've even got started enough to have any coherent closing comments. I mean, yeah, maybe I would just leave with, you know, the motto of the Royal Marines. So I came to all of this kind of agility, art of war, OODA loops, all that stuff, like 10 years after I left the military. I've never heard of any of this stuff in the military.
Wow.
But we were doing it all the time, right? And the ethos of the Royal Marines is be the first to understand, the first to adapt and respond, and the first to overcome. And I think that is, yeah, I mean, it's a great ethos to try and apply to life. And I think it's very much in keeping with what we've been discussing here. I'm very much looking forward to round 2 on Thursday.
Thank you. Liam.
Yeah, my brother was in the Royal Marines, Ben.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, and my uncle actually as well. So I got a good family connection there. Yeah, I would have loved to have gone in myself at one time in my life when I was in a lot better shape. It's a demanding branch, that's for sure. I agree. I can't believe that time's gone so quickly, and I think that's a really good sign. I appreciate this as a learning experience. I'd never heard of Boyd before, Ben, but I mean, it sounds fascinating. So I'm going to be Googling him. And what's the name of his work?
OODA. I'm more than happy to be a denial of service on your reading list anytime.
Okay.
Just let me know. I've got a list, 16-hour-long YouTube playlist, whatever you like.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. So I'm going to be looking that up because it sounds like it goes so well with Sun Tzu and the Art of War. And you know, over the last 10 years or so that I've been doing this, whenever I've been interviewed, you know, the interviewer typically knows something about the Art of War, but you know, I'm the expert in the room, and it's great to be around other people that know as much or more than me about the Art of War and about strategy, and that I can learn from. So I really appreciate this, that, you know, and the probing questions from Chris, you know, getting me to think. It's the first time I've had to do it in a while, so I love the challenge. Like, you know, it keeps you fresh, and it's what you need. So I want to say thank you to all 4 of you for you know, helping me.
Thank you. Sai.
Thank you so much. And echoing everything that everyone is emphasizing relative to gratitude for the conversation, I think one of the beautiful things that I experienced is really the diversity of perspectives, extremely powerful. So exactly, our learnings are growing. So the diversity, I think, is extremely, extremely powerful. And I think it really emphasizes that the art of war, it's not a recipe. It's not a recipe for success. People just don't pick up and read it and think they're going to be successful. But it truly is wisdom to be embraced, to be blended with our own wisdom, I'll put it that way, individually, and truly lived and experienced, and only then does it really manifest. And I really appreciate, again, the diversity of how it's manifested across the different dimensions that we brought forward. And last but never least, Chris, I really, really appreciate the probing and the pushing. It really is very powerful. So thank you all, and thank you, Chris, likewise.
Thank you, everyone. It has been a fantastic conversation. I was a little bit afraid that I will ruin this, but you've saved me. So thank you. Thank you so much. I've made a couple of notes, and on the next episode or the second part on Thursday, there's actually a couple of subjects that I would like to continue with you. And the list I've made so far is how to be okay with conflict. Do you think that Art of War is more like a book, like a prosthetic, like the giant shoulder, which we use to channel our own preconceptions about the world? I want to talk about the art versus science, because that's like Sun Tzu wrote about it in a slightly different words: orthodox versus unorthodox movements. So I think balancing those two and finding the right amount of unorthodox movements, basically improvisation and intuition, is an excellent subject. And one more thing, delegation. I think this was the subject that Cynthia touched. How do you empower people? And how do you know, from another point of view, how do you know that despite feeling good in a situation and feeling confident that you know and understand it, how do you avoid traps of overconfidence? Again, thank you all, and looking forward to Thursday.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Chris.
Everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.